Welcome back to Mark My Words on AM 560, The Answer. I am your host, Mark Vargas, and we've got a very special guest on the line right now, the first guest of the maiden voyage of Mark My Words. He is the former New York City Police Commissioner and a very dear friend, Bernard Kerik. Bernie, welcome to AM 560, The Answer.
Thanks, Mark. Congratulations on the show.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate that. Hey, Bernie, before I get into a couple of questions, I wanted to ask you, what do you were the New York City Police Commissioner on September 11th, the day that the world will never forget. And I wanted to ask you, what is a moment or a memory from that day that still sticks with you even all these years later?
Well, I think there's a couple moments in that day, the first day. The first thing I think is when I got down to ground zero, what we later called ground zero, trying to get into the command center at 7 World Trade. My car was stopped by a police sergeant, and he said we couldn't turn onto the block. He said people are jumping, and I had no idea what he meant. And I got out of the vehicle, walked to the corner, and I saw this debris coming down off the side of Tower 1. And I realized as that debris got closer to the ground that it really wasn't debris, that it was people. And for, I guess, the next 3 or 4 minutes, I probably watched a few dozen people jump to their death. I think that was the one of the most critical points of the day for me. And then the second was late that afternoon, around 5 p.m. I had to walk into a conference room in police headquarters, and they had all of the families of the missing from the NYPD, 23 different families that were waiting for me, and I had to walk in and tell them that their loved ones were missing. We were doing everything in our power to find them, to locate them. I tried to be optimistic, but in reality, none of them survived. We lost 22 male and 1 female officers that day.
Yeah, it's a day that we'll never ever forget. Transitioning here, Bernie, I'm in Chicago, and at least 36 people were shot, eight since Friday night here. And this weekend surge of gun violence comes after 17 people were shot in the span of 5 hours. When you were the New York City Police Commissioner and Rudy Giuliani was the mayor, you guys really clamped down on crime. And I think Chicago, along with New York City, but I think Chicago is a perfect example of failed Democratic leadership. When it's just remarkable. Every Monday morning when we wake up, we see all of these shootings. And so my thoughts are, what do we need to do so that we don't get used to these sorts of numbers? Because they are just mind-boggling, the shootings and deaths that are happening in our major cities like here in Chicago every weekend.
Well, the numbers are only going to get worse until you get different leadership. Keep in mind, up until 1994, when Giuliani took over, we averaged 2,200 murders a year. That's about 4 or 5 times the amount that Chicago has. And that was on an annual basis. When Giuliani came in, there were about 2,200. When we left, 8 years later, I think when I walked out the door, there was 631 murders. We had dropped homicide by 70%, violent crime by 65%. And in the black community, where the extreme violence was, where the highest crime rates were, we dropped the murder rate in those communities by close to 80%. So don't tell me, for those people in Chicago that say nothing can be done to fix this, don't tell me that, because I did it. The problem you have in Chicago, you have a radical, Marxist, racist mayor that really doesn't care. She doesn't give a damn about the people of Chicago, because if she did, she'd be able to address those crime numbers, the violent crime and the murder numbers, just like we did in New York City. She's just not doing it.
Yep, no, it's true. I saw Andrew Giuliani, and Andrew's a friend of the show here, and he's going to be a guest here in the next few weeks. But he put out a tweet actually, and he said that we've been told by NYPD that they have been told by the New York mayor office not to protect the pro-Israel rally in Times Square earlier today at 3 p.m. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down, and we will always stand with our Israel brothers and sisters. Rally on. Was this order really coming out of the mayor's office today?
Yeah, I think it was. But listen, this doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't. Honestly, it should not surprise anybody. New York City has seen an increase in anti-Semitic attacks over the last 8 years under De Blasio. Increasingly, crazy numbers of anti-Semitic attacks. And this recent spat of attacks, things that are going on now that have never happened before, he's allowing it to happen. If Giuliani was in office, that stuff it just wouldn't happen. Or I would be out of a job, one or the other. But the bottom line is the mayor has done the same thing he did with the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots last summer. He basically told the NYPD to take a light touch to responding to the riots. Don't go out there and be aggressive. Let them do what they want. And basically they tried to burn down the city, just like they did in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Detroit, in Minneapolis. Every one of these cities that are run by Democrats, they have the same end result, and that is high crime, high violence, high shootings, high murders, and until the people change the leadership, that stuff is going to continue.
I'm Mark Vargas, and this is Mark My Words on AM 560 The Answer. We're talking to former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik. Bernie, you just mentioned Mayor Giuliani. How is he doing?
He's doing okay. He's frustrated and battling back some of these lawsuits that came out of the elections. But he's doing okay, and I think he's, honestly, I think he's going to live vicariously through Andrew over the next year and a half as Andrew runs for governor. So I think the mayor's going to be very busy. He's going to deal with the lawsuits, these frivolous nonsense lawsuits. He's going to support his son in running for governor, and hopefully make a change in New York State because they really need it. You have a mayor that has let the city go, and you have a governor that's done absolutely nothing to help.
No, and we've now learned he's profited off of this book, millions of dollars, while at the same time he sentenced thousands and thousands of senior citizens to death by his executive order. We've got about a minute and a half, but Bernie, I wanted to ask you, you're up in New Jersey and you're going to be close to the president. He's moved his operations up until the fall up there to Bedminster from Mar-a-Lago, so I'm sure you're going to see the president. But when was the last time you saw President Trump, and what's his mood like these days?
I saw him a few weeks ago down in Florida. His mood was good. I think the president is looking toward, the 2022 elections, looking at the House, the Senate seats that are up for grabs, different governors' positions. I think, listen, this guy, he has some really good insight as to what has to be done for 2022 and 2024. And I think with his help, there could be some really positive changes. And I could tell you, he has no loss of energy. So he's going to be out there swinging.
Do you think he's leaning towards running in the next presidential election?
I think it's premature to say, but I can tell you this: whether he runs or not, he's definitely going to be instrumental in what happens in the 2024 election. 1,000%.
Yeah, but I think that the mistake that many people make, like Liz Cheney and our own Adam Kinzinger, is they underestimate the power and strength of President Donald Trump, and he is still the leader of the Republican Party. Bernie Kerik, thanks for joining us here on the maiden voyage of Mark My Words. You're listening to AM 560 the answer.